Super Bowl 54 was a true classic. Not only did we get to see a quality game, one that was tightly contested the entire way through, but we were also witness to what many people believe might have been the official coronation of Patrick Mahomes as the NFL's most dominant player. With the Chiefs trailing by a score of 20-10 with just under 9 minutes left in the game, Mahomes led the Chiefs in a 21-0 scoring run, giving Kansas City its first Super Bowl victory in 50 years. Although he started slow, Mahomes was excellent when they needed him most, throwing for 286 yards and 2 touchdowns, while adding 29 yards and a touchdown on the ground, earning him Super Bowl MVP honors. In just 2 seasons as a starter, Mahomes has now racked up 2 Pro Bowls, an All-Pro, an MVP, and now a championship ring and the Pete Rozelle Trophy for Super Bowl MVP. Not a bad start for a guy that was supposed to be the latest Big 12 quarterback to bust in the NFL. Anyway, in recent weeks, we've started to see that epic Super Bowl re-emerge in the news. Unfortunately, not for any of the same exciting storylines that made it such a phenomenal game. Instead, it's found itself inserted into the recent mania surrounding the coronavirus, also known as COVID-19. That's just where we're at in society today. The Super Bowl, which took place over 2 months ago, has now joined just about every other news story imaginable and having been tied back to the coronavirus. The hysteria has gotten to the point where people are leaving no stone unturned in seeking and churning out hypotheses for all the different ways that COVID-19 has impacted life, and as well, how it might have impacted certain events, or how those events may have impacted the spread of the infection. That includes the San Francisco 49ers Super Bowl loss, which some experts are actually starting to come out and claim was a good thing, because it may have saved lives? It may go down in the annals as being a brutal sports loss. Dr. Bob Wachter, the chair of UCSF's Department of Medicine, told the Wall Street Journal, but one that may have saved lives. It would not have taken much to spread in early February for the thing to have gotten way out of hand, Wachter said, but that would have been enough to light the fire. Listen, I'm not here to immediately refute the point or anything like that, but before we let this haphazard hypothesis evolve into fact, let's take a look back at the timeline of events and how some other areas were affected, to see if San Francisco's Super Bowl 54 loss really saved lives. The origin of Dr. Wachter in the Wall Street Journal's claims stems all the way back to 1918, when it was the Spanish flu outbreak that we were battling, not COVID-19. During this time, the city of Philadelphia decided to host what the government called a wartime morale parade. This morale parade is now officially known as the Philadelphia Liberty Loans Parade, and it wasn't really about morale at all. Rather, to promote government bonds to help pay for the needs of Allied troops during World War I. City officials anticipated that the event would draw somewhere around 10,000 spectators, give or take, which would at the very least help them start to chip away at the $259 million that the city was tasked with raising for wartime efforts. However, a week and a half before the parade was set to take place, something happened. The first reported case of the Spanish flu hit Philly through the Philadelphia Navy Yard, where sailors returning from Europe would dock their ships. As the word spread amongst the local medical community that the Spanish flu had reached Philadelphia, many local physicians warned city officials about the potential dangers associated with continuing to hold the parade now that the infection was within the city limits. The general consensus was that packing thousands of people into a couple of city blocks could exponentially accelerate the spread of the infection, which sounds pretty familiar with what's happening today. While there is still some debate as to whether or not he was more of a scapegoat or a truly ominous figure in history, Dr. Wilmer Cruz, the director of Philadelphia's Department of Health and Charities at the time, gave the officials go-ahead to hold the parade, and on September 28, 1918, the Philadelphia Liberty Loans Parade commenced, and nothing would ever be the same. City officials were shocked, and at first, overjoyed, that there were over 200,000 people in attendance, both Philadelphians and people from other East Coast cities. But in the days following the parade, it quickly became evident that there were a ton of spectators who had unknowingly been carrying the deadly strand of influenza, and it spread like wildfire. Within 24 hours of the parade's conclusion, well over 100 Philadelphians had been stricken with a mysterious deadly influenza. And during the first week of contagion, every single bed in all 31 Philadelphia area hospitals were filled. 1 week later, 4,500 Philadelphians were declared dead from the Spanish flu, and 47,000 people were infected. And the city, along with the rest of the country, was plunged into a panic. This was the first time the term super spreader was used, in reference to a mass gathering that doubles as a biological bomb, infecting countless people who then continue to spread the virus before realizing they themselves have it. While this was a long time ago, and obviously we've made some advancements, both scientifically and in the development of our healthcare infrastructure, this tragedy has served as a reference point in nearly every aspect of our response to the current situation. And it isn't just the tragedies of long ago that scientists are pointing to in their argument that the 49ers loss actually saved thousands of lives. In fact, the event that many of them have used to justify the widespread concern over mass gatherings was very recent. In fact, the event that many of them have used to justify the widespread concern over mass gatherings was very recent, and it just so happened to take place 2 weeks after the Super Bowl. The event in question took place in Europe and involved two other countries most heavily affected by COVID-19, Spain and Italy, which have had approximately 183,000 and 170,000 cases respectively. There is a Champions League soccer match scheduled to be played in Milan, Italy, between Atalanta and Valencia. The match was originally supposed to be held in Bergamo, Italy, where Atalanta is based out of. But ahead of the match, the team's leadership decided that they wanted to move the game to Inter Milan's venue, San Siro, seeking high ticket and merchandise sales, because they felt that their 21,000 person capacity stadium was too small for such an event. So fans flocked both from Valencia and Bergamo. In total, 44,000 plus crammed into San Siro to watch Atalanta secure a 4-1 victory. Spirits were high amongst the Italian fans who made the journey, but little did they know that they were serving as a super spreader, and were not only putting themselves, but also their loved ones at risk. While immunologist Professor Francesco Lafoche, who closely monitored the situation in Italy, acknowledged that there were probably a handful of major catalysts for the virus' subsequent explosion across Europe, he believes that this match was in all likelihood one of them. Here's how he described it. The Atalanta-Valencia game could very well have been one of them. It was the apex of collective euphoria and a unique football season for this club. A month has passed since that match, so the timing is pertinent. The aggregation of thousands of people, centimeters away from each other, engaging in manifestations of euphoria like hugging and shouting, all of that could have favored viral reciprocation. I have to imagine many didn't want to miss the game if they had tickets, even if they felt a slight fever. With hindsight, it was madness to play with a crowd present, but at the time, things weren't clear enough. It'd be unthinkable now. And considering that Bergamo has since emerged as one of the most affected towns in the world, with about 10,000 cases of the virus despite having just over 120,000 people in its total population, he may be onto something. I mean, think about it. 10,000 cases in a town with 120,000 people? That means nearly 10% of Bergamo's population has been infected, and that's only what's been reported so far. Obviously, this is all a rather dire situation, and the last thing we want to do is downplay what happened in Europe, or what is now happening in America. But the question remains valid. Would a 49ers victory parade have created a similar effect in California to what happened in Italy? Well, that depends on two primary factors. First, what would the turnout for a Niners victory parade have been like? And second, how prevalent was the virus at the time that the parade would have taken place, particularly amongst the population that would have been in attendance? Let's address the potential turnout first. California is far and away the biggest state in America in terms of population. It has approximately 40 million people within its borders. For a point of reference, Italy, an entire country, has just 20 million more than California. Texas, the second most populous state in America, has 30 million. San Francisco itself, where the parade would have presumably been held, has just under 900,000 people. So, there are plenty of people to spread it from a population standpoint. And considering how popular the 49ers have been in recent years, it's pretty safe to assume that a sizable number of California residents would have turned out for the parade. Think back to 1995, when the San Francisco 49ers last hosted a Super Bowl victory parade. The event drew in excess of 300,000 people, despite the fact that it was a rain-soaked Monday. The Associated Press described the 95 parade like this. Fans stood at least 10 deep along the parade route on Market Street. Arches made of red and gold balloons were positioned over the street every block or so. Thousands of people filed 10 deep. That sounds eerily familiar to what took place in Milan, only with way more people. And to make matters worse, both the population and the popularity of professional sports has only ballooned since 1995. For the Toronto Raptors victory parade, there were approximately 3 million people in attendance, and the event was centered in Nathan Phillips Square, a space that has a capacity of around 65,000 people. While there were measures to enforce the capacity ensured the parade goers' safety, I'd wager that people were squeezing into every last space possible, both in Nathan Phillips Square and its surrounding areas. And that's for a Canadian NBA team winning a championship. No disrespect, because the Raptors do have a great following. And while it has grown to be increasingly popular in recent years, basketball is not an institution in Canada the way football is in America. For more of an apples-to-apples comparison, consider the situation in Kansas City, where the actual Super Bowl winners and their fans held their victory parade. Despite being a significantly less densely populated region than the Bay Area, the Chiefs still had over 800,000 people turn out for their celebration. In the miserable Missouri February weather, no less. So, it is safe to say, had the Niners won, it would have been enough people densely packed into a handful of city blocks to perpetuate and accelerate the spread of COVID-19, which would have put millions at risk. But there was still a big if at play. The virus would have had to actually have been present for such a catastrophe to take place. And the reports on that are inconclusive, to say the least. While the Bay Area is a natural hub for travelers going to and from Asia, and Santa Clara County had its first 2 cases of COVID-19 the week the parade would have taken place, both victims were travelers returning from Wuhan. And by all reports, the virus was contained, and in the time since, there have been a slew of positive tests in California, 27,000 and counting. But the exponential spread of the illness started weeks after the parade would have taken place. And on top of all that, the state where the Chiefs actually held their Super Bowl parade, Missouri, actually ranked 29th among all US states in terms of cases per million people as of April 20th, with 936. So it's not a stretch to suggest that San Francisco losing the Super Bowl had very little impact on how the virus affected the area. Like every sensationalized news story these days, there are inklings of truth sprinkled in. But if you ask me, it's a stretch to say that the 49ers losing Super Bowl 54 really saved thousands of lives. What do you think? Do you believe the 49ers Super Bowl loss actually saved lives? Join us in the comment section below. If you liked this video and learned a thing or two, clicking the like button helps us out a ton, and we appreciate it. If this is your first time coming around to TPS though, subscribing is a great idea, because we put up videos like this every single day. But as always, thank you for watching, and we'll see you guys next time.